What's up YouTube, Pheano here. Today I'm going to be bringing you a Living Legend Prism deck profile. I thought with Skirmish season coming up, good time to revisit this and talk about the changes that have happened to Prism and do kind of a basic rehash of different things with Prism, because I didn't cover everything in the last video of explaining, why you play certain cards in Prism. Before jumping into things, if you want the deck list, it'll be in the description below, as well as a specific one on Patreon where you can get all of the sideboard notes. Now in this video, we're going to be explaining what is in the deck list, explain certain card choices, we're going to be going over basic game plans of what you're trying to do with Prism, and then lastly we'll talk about some alternative cards that you can put in the deck if you want to make some changes for yourself. Now first, let's explain the deck list. For our equipment, of course, we have Luminaris, then we have Balance of Justice, Phantasmal Footsteps, Stonewall Gauntlets, Fandale Spring Tunic. This is the setup that we're playing in most matchups. And then in our sideboard, we have Gnome Room Gloves and Imperium Rapture. We're going with balance over Crown of Providence and Arcanite Skullcap because there's a lot of decks floating around in the meta right now that actually trigger this, including Lexi, Chain, and Zen. Basically, any deck that plays Art of War or anything like that, balance is going to be pretty good into. We used to be on Arcanite Skullcap, and that was specifically because of Starvo. The extra block value actually came up quite frequently in that matchup. But where Starvo's gotten significantly nerfed since the last time we've covered the deck, don't really need that as much anymore, and the aggro decks have gotten significantly better. Stonewall Gauntlet is a massive improvement over what we used to have. We used to be playing Ironhide Gloves, and terrible. Why play that when we can get the same effect for free, basically? And this even has upside in other matchups. Against Starvo, it's basically the same thing, except for it's free. Against Lexi, they can't open a Bolting Shot for +1. They have to sandbag it for the end of the round, or choose Go Again. Either way, I got my value by not even blocking with it. Against Zen, obviously it's good in that matchup for getting 3 to 4 value sometimes. Plus, also, it lets us present situations where we block with a Stonewall and our Footsteps at the same time, and then they break Chain to reset the gauntlets, letting us block again with our Footsteps. Now, we are Tunic most of the time in most matchups. The reason being the value of Tunic and Prism is very high. You can either pitch a blue to play a yellow aura just off of a single pitch card using the Tunic resource, or you can use your Tunic resource to play one of our many one-cost attack actions. Now, we do have an alternate chess piece in the side. This is basically for the faster matchups where we're throwing more Heralds in the matchup, and we're playing more of an aggro-slanted game plan. And then Null Rune Gloves for any of the matchups that play Arcane. One other nice thing about the Rapture, too, is you can pay into the instant to give it ward by pitching a yellow, and that will give you Go Again for your board. It's not going to destroy itself by doing that because you didn't take any damage. It just gives itself ward. If they happen to do damage on your turn, yeah, it'll die. But a lot of the times, you're just going to activate it and just say, hey, I have Go Again. I don't need to do something else to get my Go Again if you're in a situation where that comes up. That's very frequently how you end up using your hero power, just as an outlet to put a yellow into your pitch to push your board. So this functions as an impression of that doesn't require your soul. Now for the core of the deck, we are playing every single Spectral Aura, and this is your #1 game plan in almost every matchup. What we're trying to do as our core game plan is utilize the Luminaris to play lots of auras and then create a situation where it's very inefficient actually blocking all of our damage because of the way the damage package is. There's a lot of 1-1-1-1-1. So there's no good way for them to stop the damage. And then it eventually creates a snowball effect of we have too many auras on the table, we're presenting too much damage, because eventually we can start blocking with our whole hand, pitching a single card to something like our hero power to turn on Go Again with Luminaris and attack with our entire board. So we start having single card 5, 6, 7, 8 while blocking with the rest of our hand. So not only is the value very good once you start doing that, but also incredibly inefficient to block. Now, as of the last time we've covered LL Prism, there's one new aura addition to the deck, Restless Coalescence. Now, this is coming in over the prismatic shields that used to be in the deck. That card slot filled a very specific role. I wanted a card that diversified our threats for matchups like Starvo, where I want to say, hey, I have these Spectres on the table, but I also have some ward on the table like Spectral Shields or something. If you just spend the entire game swinging at my auras and playing action point cards, you're ignoring my other auras on the table. You have to hit me to get rid of those. And if you do that, now I can block, and I can put cards in front of cards, and now you've ignored my Spectral auras, and it becomes very hard for you to actually make any progress clearing my board. And then in the mirror, it was also very good because it was a way to put something on the board that didn't use your action point and then let you attack into their auras, letting you clear. One of the massive hurdles in the mirror is fighting over the auras, because it's incredibly hard actually playing your blue auras, because it's almost always better to attack their aura than to play your own. Prismatic introduced a lot of problems to the deck, though. For one, it was a red non-block, so that created a lot of issues in itself. Restless, being a yellow, lets you at least still turn on your go again. The other thing is it costing 3 means that you're not actually turning on go again if you keep a 2-card hand to play that. You'd have to then pitch another yellow to do something. So now either we're inefficiently overpitching a yellow, or we have to use our tunic counter plus a yellow, or we have to find something else to use our resources on, like maybe using our hero power. And maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we want to save our hero power for later on so we have an outlet to turn on our go again. Restless is a 1-card version of that effect. We don't really use the +1 counter aspect of it. I'm not expecting to keep a shimmers around and get counters and be able to yoink them off with my Restless, but it just being essentially just, I'm going to play this, I'm going to swing for 1, and it's ward 2 in the back. It's just a fat spectral shield. A lot of the times it's going to be good enough as a way to diversify your board. Other than that, real briefly on the auras, the blue ones are the ones that you're mostly focusing on a lot of the matchups because they're the most efficient to play. They're not an instant, but what you can do is just block and then play one of them, and it lets you slowly build out your board while being defensive, or top off your board after you've already attacked with everything. The yellow auras are very hard to get value out of playing because it's going to cost you 2 to 3 cards to play them. You know, a 3-card one, not very impressive, especially if they just pick it off immediately. The benefit of the yellow ones and what you're trying to do is get ahead on board so you can get multiple Spectra going, so it's impossible for your opponent to ever clear your board fully. For that reason, you kind of need to play them. Shimmers is the best one if your opponent is playing a deck that is really inefficient at clearing your auras, since if this gets ignored, it just wins the game by itself. Haze is the best one if they are respecting your board. Parable and Ode are the 2 workhorses that actually usually win the game most of the time and get the most value in. Genesis and Merciful get answered almost immediately most of the time. If they get ignored, sure, they're crazy, but that just never happens. Ode and Parable very frequently get ignored and then accrue a ton of value over the course of the game. You do need to make sure that you conserve one of your Mercifuls, though, at least. I find myself frequently pitching the first one that I see. That way, when I hit second cycle, if my opponent gets low, I can just kill them by playing the Merciful and it sees the shields that I have in play. Now, as for the rest of the core of the deck, we have our pitch cards that are also block and sometimes attack. We've got a bunch of Heralds here. We're trying to keep at about 30 yellows in the deck at all points when sideboarding, unless it's a matchup that we're trying to just block very aggressively like Chain. And then we're trying to stay at about 21 blues, sometimes 22. The thing with your blues is with your blue auras, they're not really resource cards a lot of the time, unless you're drawing multiple blue auras in the same hand. So we need to make sure that we have enough blues in our deck that we have blues when we need them to actually play our turn. We're not always pitching blues to cover what we're doing, since we do want a yellow in our pitch. So the only times that we care about a blue is when we're on that tunic, so that way we can pitch a blue, use our tunic to play a yellow aura off of 2 cards. But a lot of the times we're trying to have a double aura turn, so if we have a blue aura in our hand also, we're still trying to play that there. So you might go pitch a yellow to play something else to get your go again, like maybe your hero power, and then pitch your blue to play your yellow aura, and then play your other blue at the end of the round. Importantly here we have Erudition, just Pot of Greed, very good card. Celestial Cataclysm, just in case they ignore our Genesis and it kind of goes crazy on Soul. Also a popper in the mirror. Judgment, this is to have some tech for both Pheano, Chain, and Zen. Warmonger's also for Chain. And then the attacks that you're actually probably casting the majority of the time, all of your 1 costs, and we have some more at red as well. We have another 6 1-cost reds in the deck. The 1-cost attacks are insanely crazy value in the deck. A lot of the times what you're trying to do is pitch a yellow and throw one of these 1-cost attacks. You'll still have $1 floating, so you can either play for Footsteps if this gets popped and then push the rest of your board, or if they don't, you throw another one afterwards. If you throw 2 red heralds off of a yellow, that's a 3-card 14. That's such crazy value. And if we have Rapture, that's another shield that you get to make on top of that. In the racing matchups, this is one of the most important things that you're going to do. Now, for most of them, it's just number. All we care about on this card is the raw number on it and the raw efficiency. But there's 2 of them that actually have some cute effects. Phantasmal Symbiosis, you can name one of the potential poppers that they have in their deck, and then that card will become Illusionist. Therefore, it won't be a popper because it's an Illusionist card. So you can like name Command and Conquer, and it can no longer pop this. And then with Metamorph, it essentially can't be popped. If they pop this and let you copy one of your auras in play, the game just can snowball out of control. A lot of the times it just says 1 for 7 unblockable. And then lastly, we have the defensive cards in the list. We've got all the 4-block ones, Fate and Sync, and then Soul Shield, and that's all you got. These are nice because they're yellow, so they still work with your weapon. Sync and Fate, 4, just good number. They also help you fix a bit because either I need to find a yellow or I need to get rid of some of my non-blocks so I can block a bit better. The hand smoothing actually matters quite a bit in the deck. Soul Shield, very importantly, getting the extra soul. You don't actually have a lot of ways to get soul when you're focusing on auras. It's the Merciful Genesis, which, as I mentioned before, get answered almost immediately. And then you're not really throwing that many heralds. So it can be very difficult to actually get some soul going. So the Soul Shield's very nice for that. And it helps you get into that spot later on in the game where you just block with your whole hand, activate hero power to get your go again, and then push your board. And then that all you got just good in the current meta. You know, we got Zen, we've got Chain. Just there's some good targets for this in the meta, and picking off Needles against Zen is just massive. I'm gonna throw out some card images here, but some other cards that you could consider in the deck. As I mentioned before, you could play Crown of Providence or Arcanite Skullcap. Really depends on the meta. I think if you see more Starvo, it's pretty reasonable to go back to Skullcap. You don't really see much reason to play the Crown, though, right now. There's not a lot of reason to care about the Arsenal Disruption as Prism because you can just play things at instant speed a lot of the time. One cute thing that does, though, is put a card into your hand so that way you have more pitch to play your round. That can be relevant sometimes. A third helmet, though, that you could consider adding to the list, which I'm debating on cutting one of the blues to add this to the deck, is Crown of Reflection. Absolutely incredible all-star in the mirror. As I mentioned before, the mirror is a lot about trying to get ahead on auras, so finding a way to get your blue auras in play can be very difficult. This lets you sacrifice one of your shields to put one of your blue auras in play and get ahead of them on action point economy. Trade-off is you're a bit weaker to Herald Beatdown, which is one of the reasons that I don't have it right now. I found that I was falling behind against people that were just going Ooga Booga Herald Smash, so having the balance to block out an Erudition or something, or just crack it to draw a card if they Erudition me is very helpful. You could consider adding some more poppers to the deck. I'm only playing the 3 right now, so something like Command and Conquer is pretty reasonable. I've actually considered United We Stand, I think the name of the card is, a few times. It just being something that I can block with and then make a shield, that way I can attack with it. That ends up being the same defensively as a 3 block if you just use the shield as part of the block, but then it has the upside of if I don't break the shield there because they're not swinging enough over to actually break it, then I do get to get the extra shield to attack with. Unfortunately, it doesn't work blocking with D-Reacts, so that's one of the reasons I don't really like it. More Red Heralds. As I mentioned, Ooga Booga Herald Beatdown can be pretty good sometimes. I personally like playing more of a defensive strategy where I'm blocking, but it does have its merits. It can be good in the mirror, but it can also be bad in the mirror. Like, you can just fall behind on board because they popped your Herald a few times, and then the game snowballs out of control because you just didn't do anything and traded for 1 card. If I were to add some more Red Heralds, I think I'll just cut some of the red reactions, maybe cut the extra yellow auras I added, the Restlesses. Much like Restless, another yellow card that's new that you could consider adding to the deck is Dissolve Reality. Pushing them off of Arsenal is pretty good sometimes, and also, you utilize the Ponder very well. Almost every single card in your deck is a good Arsenal, so just getting a random Ponder is not bad. And the floor? It's still a yellow block 3, which are things that you want in the deck. That's it for the deck profile, though. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, the deck list will be in the description, and the one for Patreon will have sideboard plans and some general short write-up of game plans of how to navigate the different matchups. I'm going to be making another deck profile soon of new Prism, actually. I've been messing around with her in LL, and she's actually pretty interesting. I think there's actually some merit in playing new Prism in LL. If you have any questions or if there's anything that I didn't cover, just let me know in the comments below and I can get back to you. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. I do a lot of Prism content. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you.